I love the part when I was like, ah!
Give me a little kamikaze. Give me a little bonsai. Wake up in here.
They're going to the land where the code of the ninjas began.
You are not Japanese. I can do it. Now, for the first time, the true story.
Welcome Japan.
Welcome Japan.
Welcome Japan. Welcome Japan.
Welcome Japan.
Welcome Japan.
Welcome Japan.
Welcome Japan.
Welcome
Welcome
Japan.
Welcome Japan.
Welcome Japan.
I'm nothing but a worthless gaijin.
Hey everybody out there on the YouTube source, it's your great super fuck, I gotta do that again. I was gonna say friendly neighborhood Tkyosam, I'll do that. Spider-Man, I mean Tkyosam, patent pending. Hey everybody out there on the YouTube source, it's your good old buddy, your super friendly happy fuck, god damn it. It's flowing. Hey everybody, it's your neighbor fucking okay, whatever, I'll just say it again. Yo, what's up people out there on the YouTube source? This is your good old buddy Tkyosam, and I'm coming to you live from the Welcome Japan podcast here, and I am today we're going to be talking about Shimane prefecture down in southernish type of Japan, and today we got my good friend Mr. Myargonauts here on YouTube, Mr. Jason, and he is going to tell us a little bit about his experiences in Shimane and just tell us a little bit more about the Shimans and stuff. And anyway, thanks for being on the podcast today, Jason.
No problem, Sam. My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, dude. For all of you guys who don't know, just a slight little brief overview of what these podcasts are like. If you're coming in for the first time, my name is Tkyosam. I live in Japan for 10 years now, and I'm doing a podcast to just kind of introduce every prefecture of Japan. And in every podcast, we go over a little brief history of the person who we're interviewing, and then they tell us a little bit about their prefecture, and then they tell us some stories about their time in that prefecture. Beep. Take that, heater. Whew. Yeah. Anyway, I know Jason from YouTube. He was, I think, one of the first people ever to be talking about being an ALT in Japan, and at least maybe there were a couple other people, but he was the only one being consistently uploading questions and just basically just answering stuff throughout the whole time I saw him on YouTube. And also he's a big sumo and movie buff, and he's a very interesting cat. Yeah, and he's awesome. You guys should go check him out. And like at the end of every podcast, I'll let him plug whatever he wants to plug at the end of it. But for right now, let's jump into it, huh? So first off, what's I said my Argonauts and Jason. Are there any other names that you like to be called by on the YouTubes?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, my Facebook page is my Argonauts. A lot of people know me that way. And then if you just type in Jason and the word sumo, my sumo channel comes up. So it's pretty well known on YouTube nowadays. So
just to clarify here, okay, so where are you from, Jason? In
so
the States?
I am originally from California. And I lived there until I was about 7, moved to Dallas, Texas, lived there until the middle of high school, and then my father got a job in San Diego, California. So that's what I consider my hometown now. When I give my Jiko Shokai, my introduction to Japanese students and people I meet, I say my hometown is San Diego. That's where my father and sister live now. So when I go home to America for vacations, that's generally where I end up. And I've lived in Japan just a little longer than you. I came in 2004, and I've lived here just about, going on 12 years now.
How old are you now,
So I was an older jet. When I started in Japan, I came over with the jet program, and most jets are sort of Sam's age. When he first came, they're just out of college, 22 to 26, but I was 35. I didn't go to college in my 20s. I kind of had fun instead, and went back and got serious about it in my 30s, and then found out about jet, came over, and I went the whole 5 years as a jet. So I was 40 when I finished, and I'm currently 47, going to be 48 this year. So I'm going to turn 50 in the year before the Olympics come, and that's kind of been a goal to kind of hang out and stay in Japan until the Olympics, and I'm 50.
Okay, and just to clarify, how many years total have you been in Japan so far?
I did JET from 2004 to 2009, and then when I finished, after the 5 years maximum being an ALT, I did go home for a year to California, and I got a regular job, but I kind of knew almost immediately that I wanted to come back to Japan. And so then I had a friend who was a JET in Shimane in a different city. I was in Taisha, which is near Izumo, and she was living in Hamada, which is a coastal city about 2 hours down the coast. And she was working at a university and wanted to leave and go back to her home country of Canada. So she said, would you be interested in taking my job? I went, interviewed, liked it, and did that for 5 years. And now I have a new job. I live in a different prefecture. So in total, I was in Shimane just over 10 years with a year break.
Awesome. Awesome. So next question would be, so are you married? Are you in a relationship? And if so, are those people Japanese? And have you dated Japanese people in the past?
Okay, well, that's a big suitcase to unload. So, you know, one of the things I will say about Shimane is that it's a lot of old people. You're going to find this if you go to some of the more rural prefectures, is a lot of the young people leave, and you're left with very young people, meaning, you know, school-age kids, and people over the age of 60. And Shimane Ken, I want to say at one point, is like 40% elderly people. It's very rural. And so my dating options, already being 35 when I arrived, were very limited because, you know, most of the women in their 30s, if they're living in Shimane, they're married and they have children. They wouldn't really be there otherwise. So no, I never really went on a lot of dates. I'm not married. I'm sad and lonely, and I eat crackers. What can I say?
I have a pet cat. His name is Mittens, and we also have another cat friend with him too, and he's Mr. Fluffers, and we're a big happy family. Yeah, no, I mean, what is it? You know, I mentioned this in previous podcasts and sometimes on my videos as well, but yeah, it is hard to date in the countryside. I mean, there's literally like no social circles that you can go to, and even you know, it's very hard,
all the regular
right?
things I joined online, you know, hookup, you know, type of sites, and all the women that would respond to me were from Tokyo. And people that don't live in Japan don't know quite like how hard it is to get from some places in Japan to Tokyo. It can take a while, and it's very expensive. You can't just go to Tokyo for the weekend a lot of the time, you know, unless you live really close. Yeah. And Shimane is not. It's in southwestern Honshu. There's no JR, bullet train, anything up there. You know, it's long and complicated to get to Tokyo. And, you know, so even to get to a city like Hiroshima, which is on the other side of that part of Honshu, you know, you're talking about 2 or 3 hour round trip in your car to date someone. That would get old pretty fast, would be my guess. But yeah, so it's tough. You know, if you end up in a rural prefecture, you know, because of a program like Interact or JET, you have to expect that you might end up hanging out mostly with the other foreigners that are put there, unless your language skills are like Sam's. Now, Sam speaks really good Japanese, right? And I think you did even when you arrived in Japan, right? You had already had a pretty good foot in it. No? Zero?
No. I had not. Konnichiwa, bukake, sumimasen, yamete kudasai. You know, that's all. So, Oni-chan, yamete. That's all I knew.
Japanese, of course, your options open up somewhat. But I wouldn't put it down to just language barrier in the Tanaka. You know, there's more to it than that. And then, of course, you know, I'm fat. So, you know, Sam knows what that's about. But, you know, I'm an older guy who's overweight, and you know, I'm not going to be shy about that. So,
hey, don't sell yourself short, buddy. You know, I think you're a sexy-looking motherfucker, man. If I was gay, I'd hit that. I'd hit it faster than a retarded kid on Thursday. God damn it. By the way, we are not sponsored by any PBS broadcasting service at the moment, but
I think if you were a little bit older, but you looked like, you know, George Clooney, you know, you're not going to have a hard time. You know, there's going to be women who are attracted to you. Yeah, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
after a few years, you're going to know, and you'll just move on.
Yeah. Well, just to get on to the next topic though, so how's your so you mentioned it before my talking and you talking. So how's your Japanese level? Reading, writing, speaking. And I don't like to use the JLBT. I like to say, can you call up your internet company and tell them like your wireless router is not working and walk through it with them?
That I could probably do if I did 10 minutes of, okay, what words do I need to know before I got on the phone?
Yeah.
I work in most ALTs work in an environment where they're the only foreign teacher at their school. You know, you go there and you're it. I actually, because of my special program at my school now, and also when I was at the university, I had a lot of other foreign teachers at the same campus. So now I really can kind of coast more and go and just speak English. Although the Japanese staff, you know, it's nice to be able to communicate with them in Japanese. I took Japanese for a year at UCSD. I minored in Japanese studies. And so that taught me my basic hiragana, katakana, first 100 kanji, and, you know, your basic grammar and aisatsu. And so I came equipped with that, was certainly unprepared for Shimane and how, you know, you're just immediately dropped off in a rice paddy where everything around you is Japanese. You know, I got no CNN. You know, I had 5 channels on my TV. There was nothing in English. There was no, you know, books or magazines or anything at the local bookstore, yada, yada, yada. So it's sink or swim to a certain extent, but unfortunately, I have to probably put myself in that category of gaijin that I've gotten to the level where I can get by, and I'm a little bit better than that. And I can certainly hold a conversation with a Japanese coworker in Japanese, but there are certainly times where I wish I knew more, like going to the doctor or things where it's like, you know, it's important that you know what's being said. And sometimes I'll ask a friend for help. I'm not shy about that, even though I wish I didn't have to do it. And I'm certainly, my reading and writing is poor. It's mostly speaking and listening that I'm good at.
Okay, so you're like, you know, it's usable, but it's not beautiful.
No. I mean,
you know what I mean? Yes, it's practical, basic practical knowledge.
Getting in a taxi, finding my way around, going out to any store and buying something, or negotiating transactions at retail, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going on a date with a woman who didn't really speak English. I think I could, you know, we would laugh a lot and gesture a lot, but I think we would have fun. But yeah, certainly the nuance, and, you know, I still turn on subtitles if I watch Terrace House on Netflix. You know, I'm not like Sam, where I can just watch anime or whatever without it, you know.
Dude, that Terrace House show sucks.
I'm so addicted now. Don't even go there. I'm so down the rabbit hole.
It's Japan's version of Pretty White Kids with Problems, except it's Asia, you know. It's Dawson's Creek Part 2. Oh God, they for any of you guys who don't know what we're talking about, there's a TV show on Netflix called
big in the States.
Oh really? It's getting big in the States too? Wow. Well, anyway, if you guys want to go check that out, some people really enjoy it. I just couldn't get into it. Check it out. It's Terrace House in English. But anyway, let's get on to so you were able to move here because you basically, how you moved to Japan was you got a job through Jet and they brought you over here pretty much. So what are 3 reasons that you could choose on why you came to Japan?
Okay, so I was in my senior year of high school. No, my senior year of college. And like I said, I had always wanted to go to Japan, and I minored in Japanese studies. And I had been in a long-term relationship with a woman in America, and we had broken up about a year before I graduated from college. So I really felt very unfettered and free to kind of just choose where I wanted to go and live next. I really thought I would end up in the Bay Area. I really like San Francisco and Oakland and that area. And then I saw this sign that said, "Come and teach in Japan." And I thought, you know what? Why not? You know, why not go do that before I have a family and kids? And I ended up coming here thinking, yeah, a year, maybe 2, and I ended up loving it and staying 5. I think the things that attracted me, I'm not like Sam and some younger people who probably grew up on Pokemon and Dragon Ball and anime and manga. and video games like Mario. None of that really influenced me. I was more influenced by like a book by James Clavell called Shogun, and I really felt like the culture, the old school culture, was really interesting, and the language and just the the kanji characters and just how different it is from English fascinated me. And
did you ever finish reading the Gaijin, Gaijin, his second book? James Clavell.
Yeah, I read all
he wrote Shogun,
Gaijin,
Gaijin,
King Rat, Noble House.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Shogun is amazing. If you haven't read Shogun or seen it's a 9-hour miniseries that was on television before Sam was born in the 80s. And yeah, it's a fascinating place, and I just wanted to come and try it, and I just ended up staying.
I guess if we're gonna ask this too, because Jason is probably one of the, you'll meet guys like Jason sometimes where maybe their Japanese isn't 100% up to speed, but at the same time they have really, unlike me, they have like really Japanese hobbies. I would say like they got really. Jason, you mind telling people some of your hobbies? It's such a Japanese question too. What is your hobby? I like masturbating. Yeah, exactly. What about you?
Well, obviously, as Sam mentioned, YouTube was a brand new thing. There was no YouTube when I moved over in 2004, and I got on the channel, and I looked around in about 2007, and I said, there's really nobody talking about how to be a jet. There's a few people that talked about the interview or living here, but nobody had really done that. So I got heavily into that in 2008, and the videos were very well received. I made a whole bunch about how to become a jet and how to live in Japan and be a teacher. And so YouTube is definitely a hobby. I don't consider, I don't make money off of it or anything like other people. I don't really care too much about views and stuff like that so much anymore. But every now and then I would post video on my main channel about sumo. And it was something that I got really into because it was the only thing when I came home from school, you can touch a button on your remote control here in Japan, and it changes into English. And so I could watch and learn about the sport in English from 4 to 6 p.m. every day. And so I got really into it. And, partly because the guys are kind of my same size. And it becomes more fascinating the more you get in, the more you watch. So those few videos got a lot of good response. And so I said, okay, well, I'll make a whole separate channel that's just all about sumo. And it's just grown, and it's doing really well nowadays. So that's the main hobby, I guess, because it does take place 6 times a year. Keeps me pretty busy every other month. Yeah, I mean, I really, the thing when I was at university and the kids are so, they're adults and they're kind of looking at their career and they're very sort of minded on like their future and everything. I missed the ALT aspect of like being in a school and having a sports day and the camaraderie of the kids and school spirit. And so now that I'm back at a school like that, that's not a hobby, but that's something I really enjoy about my life here, is taking part in all these interesting festivals and customs that come your way. And, some of them I don't get sakura. I understand cherry blossoms are beautiful, and the very first year you're here, you should go and drink sake and enjoy hanami. But I don't go and do it every year. Like I'm like, okay, I've done that. Like I don't feel the need. I mean, if you had new friends or something, and they're like, hey, come along and do it. Of course, you would go. But some things I'm like, okay, I get that, and other things I'm like, all right, I've done it once. That's enough. So, yeah, but Japan has just got so much stuff that you can get into that you'll most likely find something that tickles your fancy,
Yeah, I think that there's a... Wait, did you say pickles? I thought it's tickles your fancy.
Well, not where I'm from.
So if you were going to talk about that shite then how about we get into the prefecture known as Shimanes, the Shimanes, the Shimane, yeah. I want to go drink some sake down in Shimane with some shit-take mushrooms. It is not a shit-take mushroom. It's a shiitake. Whatever. You're the one who wrote it in English, bro, not me. So you ended up in the prefecture because of Jet and your job, right? And we already talked about how long you lived there. So can you tell us what famous food is from Shimane? All these prefectures are always like, oh, come to Chiba, we have satsumaimo. And
I think if you asked a Japanese person, the main thing they would probably tell you is izumo soba. It's a type of buckwheat noodle that the area that I was from is very famous for. And we'd have a big festival, and they would make everything out of soba gyoza, soba bread, soba this, that, and the other. They are delicious, and there's different ways you can eat them. I prefer to eat my noodles hot. Some people like them cold. Yeah. You know, and so that's probably the main thing from my area. And then up in Matsue, the capital of Shimane, which is north of where I lived, there's a lake, and they get these little tiny, like clams or mussels from the lake, and they're fairly famous sort of regionally as a delicacy. I don't eat a lot of seafood, so I've never tried them, but I've heard they're awesome if you like that kind of thing. And that's about it. I mean, they have everything that everyone else has. They have really nice apples, and I don't know. That's just sort of they're an agricultural prefecture, so they have good rice, and I mean, I always. It's funny because if you work as an ALT, you get kyushoku, which is school lunch. Yeah. And I don't get it now at my current private school. They follow a high school model where all the kids have to either bring a bento or go to the cafeteria. And the kyushoku in Taisha was amazing because it was just my junior high and then 4 elementary schools, and that was all the one they cooked for. It wasn't a huge operation. And it was really fresh, and it was a lot of fish, which I didn't eat, but the bread and the rice and some of the other things they made, they were just very delicious. So nothing that I would say you have to travel out of your way, but if you're at one of those satellite stores in Tokyo that sells all Shimane goods, the soba is pretty good. I would recommend it.
Okay, so then on to, I guess, the next question would be, being one fellow fat guy to another fellow fat guy, what's your food of choice there in Shimane? What are you going for? What are you eating? Or not just Shimane, but like, how's your eating habits for like food changed since you came to Japan versus like now? Like, do you eat mostly Japanese food, or is it like half and half? I mean, for me, I eat mostly Mexican recently.
Yeah. I'm jealous. Yeah. Well, when I first moved to my diet changed drastically, and I lost a lot of weight actually my first year living here because of that. Because I was in college, I was eating Subway and burritos and Taco Bell and pizza every day, and yay in America. And I came here, and Shimane is so rural that we were the last prefecture to get a Starbucks. We have no delivery anything. I mean, it's probably changed a lot, but there was no McDonald's nearby where I live. There was no, the 3 major ones you see in Japan are KFC, McDonald's, and a chain called Moss Burger. None of those were near where I lived in Taisha. They try to keep it very sort of authentic and original in Taisha. And so I had zero access to fast food, and no, I didn't even have I didn't even have a kombini that was probably closer than, say, a 20-minute bike ride. God
damn, dude! At least I even had a kombini 4 minutes away from me.
I couldn't even go get little kombini food. So I was cooking a lot for myself and eating out sometimes. A lot of traditional Japanese food. Now that I've moved to a bigger city where I teach now, I'm kind of falling into bad habits where I am eating Domino's and some of the things like that I didn't have in Shimane. But the things that I developed a real like for Japanese curry, like koko ichiban.
Yeah.
I love that. I love okonomiyaki, Hiroshima style. I do love noodles, ramen, soba, udon. I love all that stuff. But since I don't do seafood, there is a lot that I sort of don't do. I don't do sushi and all that stuff. And then, anything grilled is always fun. Yakitori, yakiniku, yakisoba. All that's great. So I would say I'm happy if you say, hey, let's go out. I'm happy to go Japanese, but I'm just as happy to go Italian, or I'd love, Mexican if that was an option, et cetera, et cetera. So certainly when I go home to America and I go to the food court and they have like Thai and Chinese and barbecue and stuff, I'm like, wow, I sort of do miss that. I have to be honest. But, if you're in Tokyo, you can probably find all that.
Yeah, they what is it? I think, well, for me personally, I mean, I just make compromises when it comes to making Western food. Like for me, I've just been doing what the shit have I been doing? Well, I mean, when I say Mexican, like the place next to my place, or the supermarket next to my place, started selling tortillas like a year or so ago, and I make my own tacos pretty much. But I mean, like I use like Japanese cheese, which is not Mexican mixed cheese, like from like home. The tortillas are super small. Recently, the tortillas are too expensive, so I just make the taco bowls. Technically, it should be healthier because of whatever, not white carbohydrates. I don't know. I don't care. Point is, it's cheaper. And you just put some spicy sauce on the fucking meat and then just cut up everything really thin and slicey and just put some sauce on it and you're all good. You can eat it. But, yeah, I mean, for Japanese food, I just suck at making Japanese food. But if I'm going out, I'll totally be down. And I love how you say Koko Ichiban. You're like you're maybe number 18 or 19 of this podcast, and I think almost everybody at least one time has said Koko Ichiban. So
lovely.
I should really get them to sponsor this podcast. I think that they should. I would be like, go up there. I'm like, you listen, motherfucker. Okay, we got plenty of people here.
I will say
that love your stuff.
If you're gonna move here and you get placed in a rural place, it's amazing. I mean, Amazon.co.jp, you can get Doritos and Pepsi and Cheetos and cereal. I mean, and there's definitely things like the Flying Pig and Costco. And I mean, it's not like it used to be. You're not out in the wilderness if you don't mind spending, because they're expensive because they're imported. But if you don't mind spending a little extra to have your favorite, peanut butter or whatever, you can probably get it. It might not be at your local shop, but you can probably get it. So it's not so bad if you're one of those people. And if you embrace Japanese food, there's just so much of it, and so much of it is really good.
Yeah, it's really fucking good. And that kind of brings me to the next question. Speaking of really fucking good, so tell me, Mr. My Argonauts. By the way, My Argonauts, wasn't that like related to Jason and the My Argonauts, or something? Like, wasn't that an old Greek story or something?
Jason and the Argonauts, they went off in search of the Golden Fleece, and so you are my viewers, you are my Argonauts.
Okay, nice.
That's how that came about.
So can you tell me some cool places in Shimane, nature-wise, city-wise? I don't know, anything you want to share off the top of your head, please.
It will kind of start at the top of the prefecture and go down toward Fukuoka and Yamaguchi. So at the top is Matsue. There's a nice castle in Matsue, which has not been rebuilt a lot like some of the other castles. It's right there in the center of the city. There's a famous Irish writer named Lafcadio Hearn, who wrote some very scary stories that got made into a movie called Kwaidan. And he was one of the first writers to come over in like the 1800s and translate Japanese myth and folklore into English. And he lived in Matsue. So there's all these places you can go where he lived and get stuff about his stories. You definitely heard some of his stories if you've spent any time in Japan. There's a famous garden called Adachi, the Adachi Museum, and it's one of the top 3 gardens in all of Japan. And it's like you sit and there's like a window and you look out and it's like gravel. It's sort of very zen, and there's shrubbery that's all perfectly groomed and trees and everything. And obviously, depending on the time of year you go, it might be autumn colors, it might be winter, whatever. But it is wonderful. I've been a few times. Moving down, of course, there's probably, for people that don't know, in Japan, there's temples, and that's Buddhism, and there's shrines, and that's Shinto. And the top 2 shrines in the whole country are Ise Jingu, which is in Mie-ken, and Izumo Taisha, which is in my prefecture, Shimane-ken. And Izumo Taisha has the distinction of being the place where all the gods from all the other shrines leave once a year and go to Izumo Taisha. And they have a huge festival, and it's in November. And so everywhere else, there's no gods for a month, and everyone goes to Izumo Taisha. It's huge for Hatsumode, obviously, which is going to a shrine on January 1st. They get like 1 million visitors to the shrine.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's big. And it is a lovely shrine. It's completely ensconced in nature, and it just was one of my favorite places to go when I lived there. And then just up the road from Izumo Taisha is the tallest lighthouse in Asia, in Hinomisaki. I recommend it if you just want a nice, go up and have a nice view, and you climb to the top, and there's a little village around it where all these little shops and souvenirs and authentic eats. And then going down, there isn't much in the middle. There is a
Fuck that middle
World
part.
Heritage site called Iwami Ginzan, which is a silver mine. But to be honest, it's kind of boring unless you're Japanese, maybe. But it does exist. And then off the coast of Shimane, there's little islands called the Oki Islands, and they're wonderful. If you take a ferry, and it takes about 2 hours, you can get over there on the hydrofoil ferry. I think it's like 3 hours if you go on the normal. And it's wonderful nature and really, wonderful, friendly people. And they have bullfighting, and they have their own sumo type of thing. And but it's great for a day trip. At the very bottom of the prefecture is Swano, Tsuwano, and they're like called the Kyoto of the Sanin, the region of Japan. And it's just like they've preserved a lot of the streets the way they were in the Edo period. And there's a wonderful shrine to a fox god, like in the middle of a mountain. And they have Yabusame in April, which is horseback archery. The guys ride, and they have to hit these targets as they're riding, pulling a bow and arrow 3 times in quick succession. It's really awesome to watch. So yeah, there's actually some fun stuff to see in the prefecture. Plus, it's on the coast. A lot of people just come over to go swimming and go to the beach during the summer. The beaches are very nice, and we're just you could swim from Shimane and hit Korea. So it's Japan side
I gotta keep that one in mind.
Honshu, but we don't get a lot of bad earthquakes or tsunami or anything like that, so it's not such a bad place to be.
Okay, awesome. So I guess moving on to the next question would be, so where do you go to make friends in Shimane, and where can I go to pick up chicks? Because I don't care. Don't use that excuse. Well, Sam, I never picked up girl. Shut up. You had at least a friend or two who had a girlfriend or got a girlfriend. Where did they go?
It's like everything. Matsue, well, first of all, there's less than 1 million people in the whole prefecture. I think it's currently about 800,000. Matsue is the largest city. It's the capital. It probably has just 200,000-300,000 people right there, and so you're going to have your normal bars, your few gaijin bars, your regular bars. They do have some of a live music scene, and the international clubs, that will invite the local gaijin, hey, come to this dinner and you're only 500 yen and all the Japanese people are 1,000 and they get to come and practice their English. You can go to things like that and try to meet Japanese people. There's universities, so you can meet, if you're a younger ALT especially, you can meet, university students who aren't that far off in your age. What else? I don't know. Sports was a big thing for some people. Like they got involved in a local soccer team and it was half Japanese people, say, and half gaijin, or bicycle club, or, soft tennis or whatever it was, and if you get into some really traditional thing, like you want to learn tea ceremony or flower arranging or calligraphy or something, you'll probably meet a lot of older Japanese women, but maybe they'll introduce you to their young nephew or niece or whatever it is, So, yeah, it is a little bit harder. It takes a little bit more effort, but anywhere you go in Japan, especially if you're an ALT and you're being brought there, there's people that live there now that will welcome you, that have been there for at least a year or 2 or 3, and they'll show you around and show you the ropes. You're never going to go anywhere blind. And that is my doorbell. Hold on one sec.
Yep, no worries, guys. While Jason's going and getting his delivery really quick, I can talk about this wonderful stuff. So Shimane, Shimane Prefecture is I've never been there, but I do know that there is actually, if any of you who are watching this right now, if you guys have watched the TV show Breaking Bad, there's an episode in it where one of the characters, Jesse, has to go into this like meth house and like basically fight this couple, and the male in the couple is this crazy like red-haired looking homeless guy, and that guy is named David Uri. He plays a character on YouTube called Ken Tanaka, and he actually spent a lot of time in Shimane Prefecture, and he speaks the local dialect and everything. And yeah, he plays a character called Ken Tanaka on YouTube where he grew up in Shimane, and his mannerisms, because he's an actor, so his mannerisms are fucking perfect. His Japanese language is very, very, very high level, way higher than mine. I think at some point he was like a medical translator. That's how good his vocab was. Yeah, Shimane definitely has a lot of interesting places to go. It seems like kind of like an offset for maybe going somewhere when you're like, I want to go to the countryside, but I don't want to go to the countryside that everybody else goes to when it's busy, or when it's during vacation time that everyone else flocks to, that countryside kind of thing. So yeah, it just depends on what you're thinking of for that. But yeah, Shimane seems like kind of a laid-back place, probably a little bit more interesting than maybe Totori or some of the other places that we've interviewed so far. I know for a fact Jason was what is it, while he's getting his stuff from there, I might as well mention him a little bit. So Jason was really cool because he before he took them down off of his YouTube, he used to have a bunch of videos where he was showing what it's like to teach in a classroom, and he would show activities, he would show basically like how to, you know, do an English lesson pretty much. It was really, really interesting to watch that shit go down and just kind of get like a better idea, because like it's not every day that you could just go into a Japanese classroom and then have and just be like, excuse me, you don't know me, but can I just sit here and hang out for a bit? I'm going to be an ALT next year, and I just kind of want to know what I'm getting myself into. You couldn't really do that, but with Jason's channel, you got to see it go down. You got to see it happen. So, I don't know, I was always kind of grateful about that. That was always interesting to see him just talking to his students and just chilling. And I don't know, Jason overall, he's been a really, really chill dude. He's like the kind of guy that, like, no matter what event it is, you want to bring him just because everybody likes him at the party. It's not that he's like super amazing fucking charismatic or whatever, but just the fact that he's an overall like well-rounded nice guy. We covered basically going to all these different places to talk to people and basically interact with the females. So tell me, what's the hardest so let's get into kind of like a dark, dirty, gritty kind of thing. What's the hardest part about living in Shimane Prefecture, dude?
Hard parts. For instance, when I lived in Hamada and I was at the university, there was no movie theater. So, you know, we've talked about how I'm a big movie guy. I used to drive 2 hours in my car up to Izumo to go see a movie. Yeah.
Damn.
And then 2 hours back after the movie. I could also have driven to Hiroshima-ken. But that road, even though it would have only taken me about an hour and a half, has tolls on it. You know, a lot of the freeways here, you have to pay money to use them. So for me, that was a big thing. It was bothersome for sure, but I did it because I like to go see big screen movies. Things like that. A lot of the kids, when I would talk to them at the university when I lived in Hamada, would be like, "Oh, what did you do this weekend?" "Oh, we went to Hiroshima for shopping." There's no real shops, restaurants. Everything closes at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. The ATMs aren't even open on Sunday. There's almost nothing 24 hours except konbinis. It's just a different style of living than it is in Tokyo or Osaka or somewhere that's a big city. Like I said, there's no JR train. You can't get a train because of the mountains that separate the two sides of Honshu. You can't get a train from Hamada to Hiroshima. You know, it either has to be a bus that goes, up and down through the mountains, or you have to kind of go around the mountains. And there's no bullet train or any, you have to go somewhere to then get on the bullet train or go somewhere to then get on an airplane. I mean, there is an airport. What else? So yeah, that kind of thing. It was hard when people would come to Japan and be visiting Japan, not me per se, but Japan. And I'd say, "Oh, you should come, hang out with me." And then they'd look at their map and they'd realize how far off, how much they'd have to deviate from any kind of normal touristy plan to come see me. And they'd be like, "Oh, Jay, sorry,
Yeah.
but we'll meet you in Hiroshima. How about that?" And so that's what I usually had to do. Um, yeah, the age of the people. There's not a lot of young people around. So, that can be weird for some people. If you are an ALT, for instance, you might get put in a place where you're 30 minutes from another foreigner, or something. Sometimes you're in the same apartment building with other foreigners, but, you can be fairly isolated. So that can be hard on people, especially, I bet you, 10, 15 years ago before Skype and, it was so easy to talk to people now. You can stay connected. But back, 15 years ago when you couldn't call your parents easily and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, just normal conveniences. There's no Wi-Fi anywhere. There's no, just a lot of the things you would take for granted maybe in a city like Tokyo, they just don't have yet. And like I said, we just got our first Starbucks like a year ago out there.
What about like weather stuff wise? Like the weather in Tokyo is really mild for the most part.
It's not bad in Shimane. I would say that if, that was one of the things that I emphasized when I wanted to be a jet. I said, don't put me somewhere with a lot of snow. The 3 places I put on my application, you get to pick 3, were Hiroshima, Kobe, and Fukuoka. And I didn't get any of those, obviously. They were all a bit too big. I was shooting a little too high. But Shimane wasn't a bad compromise. It does get snowy a little bit in the winter, but literally like maybe 5 days where it sticks around on the ground. It does get, exceedingly humid and hot in summer, but so does everywhere in Japan. That's just Japan. So yeah, the weather I would say is actually good. A lot of people really liked it. If you came from, say, somewhere especially where you didn't have a coast, people love going to the beach if you're from like Minnesota or Colorado. And vice versa, if you were from somewhere that didn't have snow, you could drive an hour and go skiing or snowboarding in the mountains. So it really does offer up a lot of nature if you're that kind of outdoorsy type. What else is bad about living there? Yeah, I guess it's a little isolated, to go. I'd hear about YouTube meetups or, Sam's famous Hanami party or something. Like, I'd really like to go to that. And then you realize, how much it would cost you, and you'd have to stay in a hotel and get the train or the plane or whatever. And by the time you do all that, it's like $500, to go to Tokyo for the weekend. And it's, as much as I love you guys, I don't want to pay $500 to hang out with you. So
You should do GoFundMe's when that happens or whatever. Go do a Kickstarter. Just be like, let me get to the Hanami party to meet all you guys.
So but I got very lucky. Where I was put in Taisha, I had a great apartment. I had wonderful supervisors when I was on jet. I sent Sam a picture. I think he's going to put it up somewhere of the view outside my apartment. I mean, it literally was. I would drive through the prefecture sometime to go visit other ALTs or to go, like I said, to the movies. It's the most beautiful place I'll ever live in my life, as far as like the scenery and the nature and everything like that. I can't imagine it, but it is completely my cultural adjustment to Japan wasn't English versus Japanese or whatever you want to call that. It was living in San Diego, a huge big city, to living in podunk nowhere. That was my adjustment. And I got to really like it to the point where now I don't think I could live in Tokyo. It would be too much for me,
You got to be kind of like, not necessarily in the sticks, but you got to be kind of not in a metropolis.
The city I'm in now
normal
is a good
city's
compromise. Fine. It's probably about 500,000 people, and there's things to do and restaurants and young people again, and it's about an hour away from a big city, but it's certainly not. It's not Osaka or Tokyo. I don't think I could adjust to that at this point. But
So what's the easiest part then about living in Shimane?
Well, if you're like me a little bit and you're not crying about not seeing anyone, I like the solitude and the aloneness sometimes. What else? I mean, you really we joked about it, with Victor and Hiko and people that do other channels who live in big cities. It's a different Japan. It really just is a different style of living. The people are a little different. They're more authentic. Um, the people that are from Shimane and grew up in Shimane are from Shimane. You know what I mean? Tokyo, people are from everywhere. You might find native
Yeah.
Tokyoites, but for the most part, everybody moves there from somewhere else, right? And Shimane is the kind of place where everybody comes home to, during Obon or during, Oshogatsu. So, yeah, the people were wonderful. I never got any kind of guff because I'm an American. Sometimes people are like, oh, how do they treat you because you're an American and you bombed Hiroshima? It's like, nothing like that. And just, of course, they don't know that foreigners that well. You're going to get stared at in the shops and at the supermarket and stuff. But, that's pretty much anywhere in Japan most of the time. Maybe not so much in Tokyo. But
I have to interrupt you for 1 second though, and I gotta tell you this little story. I gotta tell you really quick because I think you're talking about the people, maybe like just pointing out that you're different or whatever. I have gotten so used. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, that you've been like. I should make a video called "You've been in Japan too long" when blah blah blah. I mean, like, seriously, I was teaching because I teach bilingual kids. That's like one of my favorite things to do, is teach bilingual kids. And on Saturday, I was teaching these two kids. They came back. They're a friend of a friend's kids, and I have a classroom that I rent out at like a local kindergarten near my house, and I was just I was teaching them, and I already have the whole schedule and everything printed out and everything. Like, I'm going through. I've done this like a million times, but I wanted, I'm giving them a special lesson just so they could join whatever. But they're from England. They only spent 2 years in England, and they're tiny little Asian kids. One's 7, and his sister's 5, but she's like less than 3 foot.
Right.
She's tiny. But she's got such a humongous vocabulary. It's like looking at a fucking smartphone or something. Like, how do you have so much information in you? And you're cute as fuck. And she's just like, I'm so used to being in Japan though, and so used to people saying, "Why are you so fat?" And I'm like, and so like now I'm hard. It's like, Tyrion Lannister, wear your, you wear your shame like an armor, and no one can ever hurt you if it's bastard. Me too. It's just like I learned from day one, just like embrace the fatness, whatever. Just take it with a grain of salt. But she asked me, I was showing her a video of me dancing, hence why my leg is all fucked up today. I showed her a video of me dancing, and I'm going really fast, and she asked, how can you be so fast? But I've been in Japan so long, I just automatically, so she's like, how could you be so fat? And so I replied to her, I was like, well, I eat junk food and I don't exercise that much. And she's like, I didn't say fat, I said fast. And then her brother's like, he's like, he's like, Moy, you can't say that, it's rude. And I was like, oh my, no, like, it was like people skills, and it's like people always want to give Westerners shit, being like, you guys are too sensitive. It's like, no, we have civility. There's a big fucking difference, You guys can talk about how fucking fat I am, or like, if I'm a fucking playboy or something, but the moment I mention anything about your fucking, like, divorce or something, or how you don't see your kids that often, I'm the asshole. Oh, Sam, hey, you're pushing it too far. I mean, I called you like 500 kilos, but I mean, I was just being nice. I was even being playful. Oh, really? The fact that your wife hates you and she doesn't want to let you see the kids anymore? Oh, I was just playing about that too. Oh, I'm sorry, Dad. Whenever somebody touches my stomach now, dude, if I'm at a party, if a girl touches my stomach playfully, I grab her boob. Like, full on, not even, I just grab her boob. And there's not been a single time I haven't done that in the last couple of years. And if a guy grabs my stomach too and he's like, oh, okine, I grab his balls, I cup him, and I say, oh, okine. And they always, and I'm like, oh, gomen ne, like, kini sarete ne tokoro ni suwatta da ka, I'm like, did I do something to piss you off or something, Oh, maybe. I was like, sono kibochi wa zenzen wakaranai yo ne, ore no hou wa. And I was like, fucking douchebags. But they, I don't know. I just had to say that because despite all that, I think Japanese people are just kind of, in Western aspect, kind of socially retarded in that point. But I mean, at the same time, we're in their country. You kind of should adapt to their customs and shit,
I
for that part.
Too is being totally honest. I currently weigh about 175 kilos. I've gained even more weight recently, and if you live in the Tanaka, you're going to go to hospitals and doctors' offices where they are not equipped to deal with your size. They don't have scales that are big enough. I've been in MRI
Yep.
machines that are completely not ready for me. I've had one doctor say he couldn't find my vein to take blood because I was too fat. I mean, things like that. And so that might not happen in big cities as much, where they have a more variety of people.
Oh no, it happens at the hospital
Yeah.
right down my street. We had to use 2 different scales just to fucking weigh me. I'm 157 right now.
So, you know, that is a problem. And it's because if you look around, I mean, like my staff of my school, all the men, I am obviously the heaviest. And there aren't any guys, you know, there aren't many male teachers that top over 100 kilos. You know, that would be considered way, way heavy here. And so you are setting yourself apart just because you're a gaijin. And then if you're big, you know, that's another layer on top. But, you know, what can you do? You got to you either get used to that, or it bothers you enough to where you want to go back to America where you can just live with the fatties. You know, so
with the other land manatees, yeah, goddamn land whales. Hey, I mean, like, hey, you know, that's yeah, but I mean, at least they have Sakazen, because Sakazen, the big guy store here, that's saved me all the time. I'm wearing everything I'm wearing right now is Sakazen stuff, and I dig it. But I mean, yeah, I thought we were bringing that up on like what's the easiest part to live in the countryside, and but I think being in the city, you'll lose a lot more weight, especially if you're like have kind of a busy schedule or you're going someplace every day. But if you're in the countryside, you can just use the car. Like I use my motorcycle all the time, you know, and it's it's great.
Blogger named Atomic Boy X?
Yeah,
so
Gregorio.
He went to Tokyo University, and the first year of his vlogs, because he was walking to stations and taking the train every day, and he had to walk everywhere, he lost a bunch of weight. I think he's put it back on now.
But he gained it back.
Because then
but he gained it back now. Yeah.
Old eating habits and blah blah blah. But Japan can definitely have that effect. I think if you live, you know, I have a car, so I drive everywhere, and you have to have one where I live. You know, in a city like, you know, Busan Kevin, I mean, he bikes to work and walks everywhere and blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean, it can have a really good effect on your health if you want it to.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. Well, let's straying from the fat guy talk for just 1 second. Where do you bring friends that are coming to Shimane for, like, you know, let's say, okay, I'm coming to Shimane for 3 days. Where are we going, Jason? What are we doing?
If I was living in the north in either Izumo or Matsue, we would definitely do Izumo Taisha Shrine. We would do the Todai, the lighthouse, and we would go out for a nice meal. And if you're really interested in culture, there's an ancient museum of Izumo that tells you all about the myths. A lot of the creation myths and things about Japan are originated in Izumo. And then we might go to Matsue for a day, do the castle, do the Adachi Museum, and that would probably be it. Maybe go out to Oki if you really had an extra day to spend, just because I really do love it out there. It's just so picturesque, and it's fun to go on a ferry. How often do you get to ride on a ferry anywhere? So
it is fun.
If
I'm not gonna lie.
To visit me in Hamada, I really would have been stuck to what to do with you, to be honest. I would have been like, okay, well, how much more do you want to drive somewhere to go do something fun? You know, because I mean, you have your basic izakaya, karaoke, bowling. You know, that's like the 3 things you can go anywhere in Japan and they have those. But once you've done those, yeah. I mean, for a college town, quote unquote college town, because, you know, I lived in the university, and the university is the main thing. Although there's only about 1,000 students, it was a tiny college. There was nothing for young people to do in the town. It was really depressing. So, yeah, you know, some places in the Tanaka are not very populated for a reason, you know. Yeah, but northern Shimane, Izumo Matsue, I think there are some fun things you can do there for 2 or 3 days as a tourist and really enjoy it. So, yeah, I recommend it to people, but I fully observe that it is, you know, it's almost a day to get there and then a day to get back to the tourist path.
So that's, I guess, when you're saying like that kind of stuff, though. So where would be your local hangout then? Where did you go when you weren't at home or when you weren't at work? Where would you go?
When I was a jet, I mean, obviously I had other jets, and we would just hang out at each other's place. Maybe we would go to, you know, an izakaya is a Japanese pub, and you would go and have drinks and food, or you would go and play darts, or there's no clubs as far as like dancing or music. There's sometimes you get live events. So yeah, it's a lot of house parties where you go to somebody's apartment because that's kind of the only option. You don't want to go to snacks too much because those places like have a big cover charge.
Yeah.
And, you can go to karaoke, of course, but that is, you get used to the group of people. It's like, oh, you're gonna sing that song again? Okay, go ahead. And so you can't go with the same group of people too often, maybe. But yeah, place. I mean, I probably, like I said, I was 35. I mean, I was not in the, hey, let's all go. I don't drink, so I probably was not the best person to ask about the hip happening youth spots.
The hip young place with the kids and the Jello pudding. Yeah, well, I mean,
and I just didn't go. So I would be home watching a Blu-ray instead or something.
Okay, so what's well, let's get to the kind of like asking you questions about your own personal stuff right there. And it says, so do you have any fun stories from when you were in that prefecture? Like anything that you just remember off the top of your head that still makes you laugh or whatever?
A fun story?
Or just, yeah, something that sticks out in your mind. Like, for example, I used to be friends with this guy from Senegal, and his friend was this guy who, you guys can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes with my fingers right now. He was the president of a construction company, wore gold chains all the time, shaved head, very intimidating guy. But he had like a giant fucking house of like a 20 mat karaoke or like a 20 tatami mat room, and then they had a karaoke machine in there, and like just fucking. He was totally in construction, totally legit, totally. But I took a picture of him when he was sleeping, and that's still on top of my refrigerator now. Whatever and I just see that every morning. I'm like, yeah, because he would always come home and he'd just be passed out. That's all he would do. He would call us over to his fucking house and then just be like, what the hell, and like we'd go over and we'd have a couple beers. By the way, guys, you're not allowed to drink and drive here in Japan, but I mean, I know my limit, and the cops were never around, so we wouldn't get plastered and be like, woohoo, road trip. But I mean, like, I'd have a beer or two, and it wouldn't kill me. But I'd go over there and like we'd have a beer or two, do karaoke, and like sing with his kids and stuff. But every single time, as soon as I got over there, he'd just be passed out on his chair and just be like, ugh. And so I took a picture of him, be like, listen, you can have it all, but you're gonna be passed out half the time if you're working your ass off for all of it. So
I would say
it's a good reminder.
Stories I have about Shimane sometimes are when I would go to like Fukuoka or Osaka for the sumo tournament or something, and I would get in a cab, and you're making chit chat with the taxi driver, and he'd be like, "Oh, Nihongo Jozu," if you say anything in Japanese, they'll compliment your Japanese. And then I would say, oh, well, Shimane-ken ni sundemasu, I live in Shimane-ken. And it would blow people away, like, wow, you live in Shimane-ken. It's kind of like, it's kind of like if you live near Mount Rushmore in America, maybe. Because the shrine is so famous, and everybody wants to kind of go there as like their duty as a Japanese person, but nobody does. And it's so out in the countryside and boonies that so few people have really been there, but everybody knows of it, of course. But yeah, most people haven't been there, and they're just surprised, I guess, when they meet a foreigner who lives there, especially one who lived there as long as I did, and likes it. So that was always fun, kind of going and checking into hotels or whatever. They're like, "Oh, you're from Shimane," and yeah. So as far as living there, I'm sorry, I'm blanking a little bit at the moment. I know I was supposed to do prep here. What's a fun story from living there? Certainly, I did have one date, and I took her to the lighthouse, and Japanese girl, and I was a little bit more fit back then, but it's about 400 stairs from the bottom to the top. And so I got to the very top, and it was not summer, but it was still hot enough to where I was pretty damn sweaty. So that was not a good date plan. Don't take your date somewhere where you're going to have to get really sweaty in the process, unless it's like a dance club or something. So that wasn't very good, but she still enjoyed it. I mean, she had never actually been there. So many people when I would talk to them in Shimane, like I had, like you do, I had students in Hamada that I would teaching Eikaiwa, and I'd be like, "Have you guys ever been to the lighthouse? Have you guys ever been to Izumo Taisha Shrine?" And they're like, "No," and they were born in Shimane and stuff. But, their parent had just never bothered to take them, and so I'm like, "Okay, let's go one day." And so I took, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old up to the lighthouse and shrine, and so showed them around and was their tour guide, as it were. So that's kind of fun to do. Yeah, I mean, it's you make the best of wherever you're put, and I think a lot of people that end up in Shimane end up loving it because you can just sort of make it anything you want to make it, and the people that you're with, have a lot to do with that. If you make some good friends or whatever, you can certainly have fun. But we had really fun days on the beaches in the summer. We went to a lot of different places in the prefecture together. There's a mountain in the middle of the prefecture called Mount Sambe, and we all hiked to the top, and there's this amazing burger restaurant at the top for some reason. We don't know why it exists up there, but it's awesome. And so just stuff like that. Most of my memories that I have now, say 7, 8 years later, are usually school-based, students that I've met. I just got invited, for instance, this is how cool the kids were. The students, when I very first arrived, who graduated when they were ninth graders in 2007 from junior high, just had their 10-year reunion. So they were 15
wow.
And now they're 25. And so right after New Year, they said, "Jason, will you come and be one of our teacher guests?" There was 3 teachers they invited back from the school, and come to a big barbecue party at the Shimane Winery, which is right down the street from the shrine, Izumo Taisha. And I was just really happy that they invited me. It was great to see about 50 of the kids came from a graduating class of about 125. And, how much they've grown up, what jobs they have now, where they're living, how many of them are living in Shimane again. And it was just, it was really fun. And, they just really enjoyed seeing me and stuff. So, and my little placard said Mr. Jason. So I can't escape that. I'm actually Mr. Harris, but everywhere I go, they put your first name there. So.
I think now that I remembered you telling this story, I think one of the ways that I knew I'd be like, that I respected you like a shitload was when you made a video, and normally you just kind of you did videos about talking or whatever, sumo or something, or mostly teaching or sumo based. I remember you were doing this one video where you were filming either outside, you're just they're filming the school grounds or something, and you're talking to the camera, you can't see your face or whatever, I think, from what I recall, but you're just you're talking about how it's either you had to leave, you're leaving Shimane to go to your next job or something, or the kids were graduating from junior high school or elementary school or something, and you broke out crying on camera a little bit, and you were like, I'm gonna miss them, I watched them grow up, and I'm actually gonna physically, it hurts to let go. And I think that I could totally at first when I saw that, I was like I kind of get it, but now I'm I totally get it, man. This is the worst part. You help these kids grow up, you're their second parent pretty much, man. And then either the board of education moves you to another school, or their parents want them to join Juku, so they stop coming to your school because they need to go into the private school afterwards, and it just sucks. You raise these kids for a couple years, and then it's just see ya. I was, it's one of the hardest parts about being teaching is saying goodbye to the kids, I think.
During my 3rd year as a jet in 2007, they changed the rule, and for the first time, you could stay at the same school your 4th and 5th year. You didn't have to then go off and be an elementary school teacher, which is usually what they made them do. So I was the first jet in ALT in Shimane-ken to stay all 5 consecutive years at one junior high school. And so that video I think was made when I was getting ready, and I realized it was my last sports day, I was ever going to have. And like you said, since I taught the kids at elementary school, from 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, I had been the consistent teacher in their lives for 5 years. And it's tough. You really do develop little bonds, little relationships with these munchkins. And hopefully, if you're lucky, some of that will continue into when they're older, and you can see how they develop and become adults. It's really nice.
Yeah, I think that it's, I mean, yeah, this is my number one thing, and one of the reasons why I kind of started my own school. It's just because, I mean, if they leave for whatever reason, that's, you
Right.
can't be helped, but I'm never going to let another person, like, another, like, boss teacher, like, I don't know, I had issues with my last international school I taught at because the boss just kept changing the kids in the classes, like, all the time, because it was an after-school, international schools, but, it's just, like, yeah, I hate it. Like, I get these kids, they're super, like, I finally get them, like, kind of, they're on a roll. I finally kind of got to know them. I understand what they need to do to learn quickly and work well with the group. And then the fucking teachers are just like, well, or the fucking assholes in charge or whatever. They're like, well, you got to change it up because, it's good to change it up. It's good to have different things. And I'm like, the way these kids learn, dude, isn't through variety when it comes to teachers. They need a role model. Like, their parents are already never there at home most of the time anyway. They need somebody who's going to be there that they know every fucking Monday or whatever. That guy, he's going to be there. It's not going to be a different teacher every year. It's like there's already so much uncertainty in life. And it's like just taking away that, especially when the teacher like you or I care about them, that's just, and we don't take it, it's just a paycheck, we actually like teaching. I don't know. That's, I'm never going to go back to that bureaucratic side ever. I work jobs completely now that I've worked at for at least years. And then I'm starting my own school this year and stuff too. So,
good luck with that.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, when you got a body like this, the
Just
chicks
stand
come
outside
calling,
and they
buddy.
flock.
Yeah, right. I have to bat them away with the broom, get them off the porch. Yeah, dude. But so anyway, aside from all that shite, then I guess I usually ask about work or whatever. But if you guys want to, I would ask you about work and everything when you were working there. But guys, honestly, if you want to go see Jason's work videos, go to his channel. He's got plenty of them that talks about what exactly it was like being an ALT. Going there, so I'm not gonna bother him with that stuff. But can you tell me about, I guess I have 3 questions left, and it would be, one, tell me about the place that you lived in when you were in Shimane. How was the rent? How was the size? What was good? What was bad? And then I have 2 more after
so
that.
like a lot of ALTs, when I moved into my apartment, it was chosen for me. It was semi-furnished and it was subsidized. So at first, it was a 400 or 4 mon. Should we use Japanese money?
Yep, Japanese money is fine.
40,000 yen a month rent, and the Board of Education paid half of that. So I had to pay 2 mon a month. I mean, when are you ever going to live in an apartment where you only pay 2 mon a month? And actually, for some reason, Izumo, there was this thing that happened in about 2005 called Gape, where a lot of larger municipalities and cities absorbed smaller cities. And Taisha got absorbed by Izumo governmentally. So my rent actually went down, and they started paying $300 a month, and I only had to pay $100. So,
oh my God, that's awesome.
$100 a month in rent. I rented a car, a lease, I guess you would call it, from a local dealer. I used a scooter for my first year that I bought. And then after that, for my next 4 years, I had a car. And so I paid 2 mon a month for that. I never had a K-time my first 5 years, believe it or not. I really didn't need it. And now, of course, now we have smartphones. It's totally different. But back then, the flip Galapagos phones, I never had one. So my apartment was kind of what you would maybe call 1 LDK, a large living space, a kitchen, a fairly large bedroom, 2 aircon units, 1 in the bedroom, 1 in the living room, which was really nice. I was spoiled. A decent bathroom, a dryer. I had a washer and a dryer, which is very unusual. But I paid for that in electricity. My electricity bill was always a little high. In a little 4 unit, so 1 person above me, no one really on my right or left, because there was sort of like a staircase in between, right in the middle of grape fields on a little river. I could see the Shimane winery from my window, just out in the middle of nowhere, but really close to the shrine. I could walk to work. I didn't, but I could have. But like I said at the beginning of this whole thing, like nothing around me, no convenies, no fast food, no restaurants. I had to go either into Taisha, but more so into Izumo to get that kind of stuff. So yeah, my expenses were fairly low, and the jet salary is about 30 mon a month before they take stuff out. So usually most jets end up with 25, 26 mon after taxes and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, for a single person especially, it was fine. I had no. You save a lot of money living in the Tanaka because you're not out places every night. You're not taking trains.
Yeah, you can't go and actually spend the money. Yeah,
or spend the money. So you can. I mean, you can. A lot of jets who get put in the Tanaka just do. Spend a lot of their time planning travel trips. They go to Korea, they go to Singapore, they go to other parts of Japan. They go to Guam, they go to Hawaii, and you should definitely take advantage of being in Asia if you're going to be put out here and do travel. I mean, that's a great boost byproduct.
There's actually a good book by well, I wouldn't call it good, but it's an interesting read. It says "Always Smile When You're Lying." It was actually written by an ex-jet, one of the first jets here. Yeah, and he talks about going to like Guam and banging hookers with like the other Japanese teachers that were at his Inaka school. It's pretty cool. You guys should check it out. It's called "Always Smile When You're Lying." I'll try to put a link to it in the bottom afterwards. But yeah, it's I don't know. When you say that, I'm just thinking of like, yeah, no, It's funny when you were going to the to your entrance to go talk to the delivery lady. I don't know why for some reason, but it like sparked something in my memory where it's just like I remember like I don't know, just like. It's like how there might not be like a memory that you remember, but there's like a feeling that you remember, like the atmosphere or whatever. And I just remember, like, because when I see your stuff and you're in the, you're there in your apartment and, somebody's coming up to your door or whatever. I just remember in the countryside, it's just like, I had no, like, it's so different. I have Japanese roommates and I have a foreign roommate right now at my house, and I do so much YouTube all the time now, and I have English teaching jobs, but I don't really interact with Japanese people as much as I did when I was in ALT. I mean, like on a regular basis, you would interact with these people, and then when you go home, there's no one to speak English to anyway, so you're just out talking with Japanese people again. And I mean, people compliment my Japanese, but just, dude, like put yourself on a Japanese island and you try to use English. It's like. And I don't know, just seeing you talk to that lady, I just remembered I was like, when I was in the countryside, like here, I always kind of play around because people expect I'm a tourist, so I like to fuck around with them. Like, watashi wa samu desu. Hey, watashi wa tacos ga suki desu. Like I'm just, I fuck with people. And it's so easy to meet up with my friends. Like, this year I wanted to do a thing where like at least once or twice a month I meet up and have a bros night out with my friends. Like every Saturday in Ikebukuro. And the thing is that like the foreign friends are always way more available than the Japanese friends, and it sucks because it's good and it's bad because at least you're not lonely. But at the same time, like when I was in the countryside, like I really had to, I didn't try. It's like I had to speak normal accented like Japanese, because oppositely, if I tried to pull the shit that I pull in Tokyo, acting like the dumb foreigner, like Bobby Olagun or something, when I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a Gaijin, like in Japan, in Tokyo it passes because everyone's so busy, they don't give a shit, they're just looking for the superficial 5-second like little cookie to grab. When it comes to interactions, sometimes, I mean, not all the time, but when I'm out and I'm meeting people at a bar or something randomly, I'm totally fine for that. But in Chiba, it's like, it's the exact opposite. It's like, you need to act like us, motherfucker. You need to speak Japanese, but you don't pull that shit. It's not cute, like, be a man, that fan, be a man, so it's, yeah, I don't know. Seeing you talk to that delivery lady for some reason just kind of like marked that feeling that I haven't had in a long time, and that was just that. That's a fun part about living in the countryside, which I guess brings me to the last two things, and that's so Jason, would you recommend somebody who's moving to Japan, either on jet or whatever, that they if they had to move to Shimane for the first prefecture to live in, would you recommend that they do it or not do it?
Because I think I think, I mean, I've never been told this, but I think there was an uptick after my videos were popular in 2008, 2009, 2010 of people putting down Shimane on their jet applications. And I'm sure there were curious interviewers. Like, okay, we understand why you put Kobe, we understand why you put Sapporo, but why the hell did you pick Shimane? And yeah, I, I had a wonderful time there. And it's I like I said, I got very lucky with my apartment and where it was and the schools that I had and what it was expected of me and my supervisors and yada yada yada. Um, every situation is different. You hear that so many times, and I would say it's a wonderful place to start because you do get that authentic Japanese experience and you see
Hmm.
what life is like for a large part of Japan that's not, Tokyo or Osaka. And then if you're a young person, though, I would assume that you would want to move on. Most Jets don't want to stay in Shimane for very long. They want to move to somewhere that's more hip and happening. Um, and I understand that. So if you're a slightly older Jet or you just really like nature, you like quiet, you like small towns, it can be maybe perfect for you. But it's certainly not a bad stepping stone if you just think you want to come for the first couple years. But it is certainly being thrown in the deep end of the pool, language-wise, etc. Not every sign is going to be bilingual in English and blah blah blah. And you're going to definitely meet Japanese people who speak no English as opposed to Tokyo, etc., etc. So yeah, I loved it. I can't. I mean, what more can I say? I guess.
Okay, so I guess the last and final question is, what are your future plans? Are you going to die in Japan? We're all going to die
Well,
at some point. I'm going to die in Japan.
I'm sure you
What
saw
about you?
that recent story about how they're changing permanent residency restrictions here. Um,
Yeah.
so that's something people often say, Jason, you should think about that. I haven't really thought about that. I don't know. I have some medical stuff that maybe is going to make me need to move when I get older. Plus, my father is, my mother passed away. My father is living alone. And if it gets to a point where he really needs someone to help take care of him more so than he does now, I would move home for that. I will be honest though with you, Sam. It's just like I've lived here so long, and since graduating from college, I've lived here my entire life for the past 12 years since college. So I haven't had really a good job in America. Um, so I would have to go back and as like a 50-year-old, like get my teaching credential and start kind of quote unquote at the bottom. And I don't really look forward to that if it has to happen. So I do kind of want to stay in Japan. Um, but it can be lonely. So it's hard. It's hard to know. I kind of do take it year to year, but like I love my new seventh grade students so much that I could easily see me staying 6 years to see them graduate from high school. So that happens too. Um, I, you know, I definitely 2020 is the goal right now. The Olympics and being 50 and stuff like that, and then we'll see from there.
Okay, then. Okay, and this is the part of the podcast, guys, where I let the guests plug whatever they want to plug for their time here. So, Jason, please
Well, you should
plug
definitely
away.
go check out this channel by this guy named Tkyosam. He makes pretty good videos. I've been watching him for a long time. My channels is the My Argonauts channel, which I'm sure Sam will put links somewhere. That I don't post on that much anymore, but occasionally. And it's definitely got a lot of, like Sam said, playlists of what life is like in the Tanaka, what life is like being an ALT, and a lot of jet stuff. I have a Facebook page, which is My Argonauts, and that I try to post to at least once a day. That's where you can like PM me if you want to ask a specific question, and I'm open to that. I don't accept friend requests on my regular Facebook under my name because I don't know who you are. Um, I've got Twitter at Taisha Jason. I've got the Sumo channel is just booming recently. So that is if you just go to YouTube and type in Jason Sumo, you'll find it. But the actual URL is youtube.com/Jasons with an S in Japan, and you'll find it. If you're at all interested in sumo, I try to be very new user friendly. It's sumo, but it's in English. and it's pretty comprehensive coverage. So come along if you're interested in sumo. And that's about it. I don't do a lot of these other Instagrams and all this new. I'm old, I don't do all this newfangled stuff. I don't play Minecraft, and I don't, do videos of challenges, ice buckets, and things like that. So, yeah, we have a great community on the sumo channel. A lot of the people, no smart asses like Sam. Everybody's really nice and helps people.
Waka waka.
But yeah, someday I'm gonna get out to the Hanami and meet all these other awesome YouTubers. I've met Victor, I've met Atomic Boy X, and I've met Hiko, and I've been to Tokyo once or twice, and I've been to Nagoya. Sam and I haven't crossed paths in real life yet, so that has to happen.
Oh shit, yeah, I just realized we haven't, we've talked on Skype and on the phone probably more than a couple times, but in person, yeah, holy shit.
Well, you've got to come out to Shimane.
I do. Well, I mean, hey, that's hopefully season 3. I mean, season 1 is interviewing everybody from 46 prefectures. Then season 2 is gonna be hopefully. I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but season 2 I want to do all 23 wards of Tokyo, since Tokyo's so big. And then season 3, hopefully if this picks up, maybe actually go and meet everybody in person and do my own fucking travel thing all around the country. Yeah. That'd be fucking tits. Anyway, I want to thank Jason for coming on and taking the time out of his day today to be part of this wonderful, awesome, special rainbow chocolatey covered goodness known as the Welcome Japan podcast. Yes, Zen Zen Wakata. Nice t-shirt. Jason's wearing a t-shirt that says Zen Zen Wakata Nai, which is I don't understand what you're saying. It's great. Yeah. And also this is the part where I like to plug my stuff too. Thank you all to anybody who's been supporting this on Patreon, or anybody who just came over from the YouTube channel to go check this stuff out. Honestly, guys, I mean, this is kind of a personal pet project for me, but hopefully if there's any of you that are planning on moving over here at some point, that these podcasts can be yakunitatsu, that they can be helpful for you in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, guys, don't forget to go check out Jason's channel. It's awesome goodness. And also, this is episode whatever the hell number of this. So make sure to go check the playlist on YouTube to go check out all the other ones. We got a bunch of interesting people that we've interviewed so far. Yeah, and Jason, before I get everyone to go, can you give me a good stay black before you go? Stay black, guys. Yeah, buddy. Hey everybody, just some last minute announcements. If you're not already doing it, please consider following us on social media, links down below. Big thank you to everybody who clicked on the podcast to listen today. Do us a favor, and if you liked this podcast, help us grow by smashing that like button, subscribe button, and subscribe bell to get notified when the new podcast comes out. Did you learn something new on today's podcast? Do you want to hear more? Which out of these 3 prefectures should we do a podcast on next? Let us know by emailing us at tkyosam@gmail.com. If you are listening to this in your car and you want to conserve your phone data, consider following us on the other podcast platforms. We are currently on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Links down below. Like always, this wouldn't be a Tkyosam production without giving a special sweet thank you / shout out to all of the Tkyosam fam who support us over on patreon.com/Tkyosam. Without your support, this podcast would be much harder to produce. Thank you all so much for the support. That's it for this month's Prefecture podcast. What did you think of it? Good, bad? Let us know in the comment section down below. Finally, we are always looking for new people to interview on this podcast. If you check out the video description below, you can find out what prefecture we still need to find people to interview for. If you know somebody, let us know by emailing us at tkyosam@gmail.com. Like always, this has been the Where Come From Japan podcast. Thank you all for watching, and most importantly, stay black.